Morning, everyone. I'm Paul Beyer from GAI Insights. Welcome to our daily GenAI executive briefing, where we discuss and rate top news items. Our team of AI analysts rate each article as essential, important, or optional, and our target reader is the AI leader at a medium and large size company. Today is December 6th. Ankash, kick us off, please.
Sure, thanks, Paul. So the first news item that we have today is from Microsoft. So Microsoft Copilot is getting the latest models from OpenAI, and it is also getting a deep search result functionality for Bing.
I think this is important in that it shows that Microsoft's really taking this. I mean, obviously they're taking this Copilot stuff seriously, but they're really adding a lot of features like custom Copilots and the latest models and everything. So I think this is an important thing to keep on top of.
I agree. But the news also is there is a new code interpreter, so they're really pushing the envelope. So this is between, in my mind, it is between important and essential.
I mean, it's for me personally, it's essential. These are things that I sorely miss. My company was part of the early access program to M365 Copilot, and honestly, I struggle to find those really powerful, compelling use cases with it the way I do with ChatGPT. And Code Interpreter would go a long way in doing a lot of things that I wish I could do in Excel, and I still have to go over to OpenAI for at this point. But at the same time, it's essential for people who are in this ecosystem and actually rolling it out, which isn't all of our listeners. So I could go either way as well.
So, Adam, this would increase the ROI of rolling it out to my employees as an AI leader?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd rate it important. It is the most interesting thing to me is the speed at which a company the size of Microsoft is moving, and OpenAI as well. But OpenAI is still a pretty small company, relatively speaking. But Microsoft is, ginormous, as my kids would say. And their ability to move at this speed to keep up with what's coming from OpenAI, deliver it to enterprises in a trusted way, that's impressive. Right. The features are good, but well known. They're just the new features from OpenAI.
Great. So let's we'll keep. This sounds like important. And just a quick note tomorrow for people who are reading, we have or watching, we have Andy Roberts from Microsoft doing a webinar with us, talking through their offerings as well. Just because there's so many and there's a lot of confusion. Ankaj, what's the next one?
The next one is from Elon Musk and his company XAI. So they are looking to raise $1 billion for XAI.
Is this a roadmap issue?
Yeah, I call this optional. He's already raised $300 million according to this report. I'm sure he'll raise the money. He could write the check himself if he wants, but it's just a money-raising thing for Grok, for the new model that he's building with Twitter.
Agreed. Optional.
Yep.
Julia agrees well?
Optional.
Yeah. Great. Next.
Okay, next one is from this company called Xtropic. They have raised some funding, but what is interesting is that they are building something called an entropy computer for generative AI.
I didn't have time to go and read the website to see if there's any more. There's zero details here. I know just enough about this to be dangerous, and the use of noise and other things that generate energy can be interesting in creating anything that needs energy, including computers. But how they're doing that to make a super efficient generative AI computer, it doesn't say, but they have physics and AI people. So I would call this optional, really interesting. And if they make any progress that they claim, it could be dramatic.
Right, and for that, Tim, you might rate it as important as a potential trend and impactful beginning of something. But I agree the details are very slim here, so it's really not known what they're going to do.
Yeah, I can go with important if other people think so. Again, we're trying to limit the sort of tsunami flow of information to these executives who have a lot to do already.
Yeah, it feels like a roadmap issue. So it sounds like a very promising thing on the R&D lab bench, right?
Right. Could be
Yeah.
a game changer, but this is just a seed round funding notice.
In the beginning, yeah.
So it sounds like optional. Next.
Okay, the next one is from Swing Vision. So Swing Vision, which is known for its uh, offering in the tennis space, is bringing its AI-enabled offering to pickleball as well.
It's fun, but this isn't about generative AI. This is just about machine vision.
It's like
Yeah, it's
optional.
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 Yeah. Well, and how many corporate executives playing pickleball? Probably a lot of them, but not
Probably a
everybody.
lot. It's the fastest growing sport in the United States right now.
All right, next.
Okay. The next one is from AstraZeneca, and they have launched a partnership with a company called AppSky for $247 million. The partnership is for oncology research.
So I'm going to say, I think this is either important or essential. It's somewhat industry specific, of course. However, everybody is looking for bona fide use cases that really scale. And this is an example of one. You could argue this is a roadmap issue, but people are already demonstrating success designing drugs, and I can go into more detail, but this is going to be a huge revolution in therapeutic development that is going to make the IT stuff look calm in comparison.
Yeah, I would argue for essential. If you look at, if cancer was a country, I think it would be one of the largest GDPs in the world. And we're talking about trying to create. I think there's two messages here. First of all, cancer is a big deal. Second is that I believe there are going to be vertically oriented LLMs,
Right.
that are going to create competitive advantage because the economies of scale of knowledge are not, universal and uniform, right? And so,
Right. It's also it helps people. Again, I think it's enormously helpful to anybody in the position of AI director or VP of AI or whatever, because here you can point to this and say, look at the progress these people are making in a serious industry. It's going to make billions, if not trillions of dollars and revolutionize care more than likely. And it's exactly the same thing. It's an LLM, but instead of using language tokens, it uses amino acids and nucleic acids, DNA and proteins.
Julio, what's your view?
I was going to argue for important for all the reasons mentioned, but I can be talked into essential. I really, I don't have a strong opinion on that on the exec level.
Adam,
I would say it's important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Luda, please.
But go ahead.
Go ahead, Luda.
I'm sorry. I was planning to say it's important and we can argue essential as a trending and as a verticalization of this type of models and application to health and things like cancer. Yeah. So I can go with essential.
I'd argue for important just because it's an announcement about a partnership, even one that's relevant to the companies that our customers may be looking to implement right now. That we often don't rate those as essential. So an announcement of a partnership, although it's making a really important point, I wouldn't say that's essential news for the executive who's trying to keep across our ratings on what's happening in AI. So I do agree, it's very important, and you're making some great points, and I just think essential's a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, for me, the reason I went to essential is if our client is trying to make a case for an investment, let's say, like I'm thinking of a private equity client of ours that, like, okay, this could be a real, multiple changer.
Amanda, strong feelings?
I don't know if I have quote unquote strong feelings, but for me, I just honed in on the R&D aspect of this. So yes, I'm also an important, but I could also for that point of view, I could be argued into essential as well.
But let me make in terms of speed. Let me just make a call for important just for now, just because it's a roadmap on a trend. But John, I want to emphasize what you and Lud have talked about here. I think we've seen so much this year on the horizontal discussion, both our buyer's guide and Minstrel,
Yeah.
you know, and we may well be looking at 500 or 1,000 more vertical companies that get formed for 50, 100, $300 million and transform industry landscape. And this is one industry.
You mean Mistral, right, Paul?
Mistral, I'm sorry. Yes, too much. Thank you. Great. So we'll go with important. John, can you live with important?
Can.
Great.
Okay, the next one is from Nexus Flow. So they have launched a new GenAI model, and they are claiming that it performs better than GPT-4 model in using software tools.
This is I could go to important here. I might start at optional, but I'll make the important argument, which is this is the first company I've seen argue they're better than the current GPT-4. Not everybody loves to say they're better than GPT 3.5, which is nice, but we all know that GPT-4 is a lot better than GPT 3.5, and very few people argue they're better than GPT-4. This is the first company I've seen. It's narrow. They're saying that just on the basis of software tool usage, that's what this is about, which is one of the things that does make OpenAI's GPT-4 pretty good. But on the other hand, it's a small company making claims. There's not a lot of evidence here.
So I have one argument for important, just because I found it interesting. I don't know much about them, but the fact of, and I don't know if it was this article or another article I looked at, but they're targeting cybersecurity. Right. And so that industry is hot right now. Now, I haven't, and I could be very ignorant here, but I haven't seen anybody else really target that. So that piqued my interest for that reason. So for me, I'm arguing important on that, just from that very aspect of it. I find it very fascinating because cyber is the place to be right now.
But see, this is another example of verticalization, what Paul, you were saying.
Yep.
And there will be many going at specific verticals with specifically trained models for that vertical. I don't know, might be optional, but to highlight the trend, I can be argued in important.
It's also a small model. This is based off of Llama 2 and then fine-tuned. So again, smaller, faster, cheaper, targeted at a vertical industry.
Yeah. So with that trend, it might be like just to demonstrate important.
Yeah. And this is a common theme we've had, I think, a few of them today, where it's an important trend, not super unique in the news itself, but important trend that it sounds like we're hovering towards important.
I would say important, and the article mentions that the company is targeted at cybersecurity. I'm not so sure that this model is, and I think what's important or interesting about the model is that it is really good at function calling, which I think is a really important general feature.
Yep.
So I haven't played with it, but if it really is good at function calling, I think it will be used everywhere, or it'll be used in a lot of horizontal aspects, even if the company is focused on cybersecurity, or I'm not sure if the model is or what, but the function calling aspects are really interesting.
Yeah. And Julio, so is this a good example of a small or narrow model at a very specific function where we may see a whole set of these things sitting out there for?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to think about it some more and see how things will shake out. The function calling part may be something that needs to be general. You may need a general model that can also tell you when it needs more information, or you may be able to break out that functionality into a smaller model. I don't know how you would do that exactly right now, but need to think about that. So let's say you had a general knowledge model, something that was really good at medicine or something, but you also wanted to be able to call functions. I think that those would have to be in the same model,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure yet.
That's what I was trying to go. So like an traditional enterprise app, you would outsource an OEM spell checker, for instance, use a simplistic example.
Mhm.
This sounds like a crude analogy over on large language models, potentially, as we learn more. Is that correct?
And,
Yes and no, because one of the advantages they claim is that you can own the model completely because it's an open source, based on an open source model, and all the data is internal. So particularly to Amanda's point, if you're doing cybersecurity, you probably want to own all the model because you don't want other people knowing anything about your vulnerabilities.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Great. So it sounds like important.
Sounds
I
good.
would think so.
John, do you agree? Important?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Next.
Okay, the next one is from Accenture and Unilever. So Unilever and Accenture have teamed up to increase productivity at Unilever and scale generative AI models, and they are utilizing Accenture's assets such as Accenture's AI Navigator and its proprietary switchboard. So through switchboard, you can select a range of GenAI models from Accenture.
Yeah, I would put it as important. I mean, it goes back to our wins work analysis. You look at these global advisory firms, they're all, transforming, right? McKinsey, PwC, BCG, Accenture. Yeah, this is the new reality. They're going to have platforms of models and leveraging humans.
Yep.
Right.
Tanya, I will channel my inner Tanya since she's driving. She argued for essential because this is an example of scaling and the ability to scale in the corporate environment. And these firms, particularly Accenture, are known for helping organizations scale new technologies and integrate them. I'm going to say important for the reasons John outlined. And Tanya's point is a good one, but this is early days. But it is an indication not just of the consulting firms themselves, but of the infrastructure that you've talked about starting to be put in place to help corporations scale these technologies.
Yeah, what's interesting is that if you take a look at you folks may be familiar with a filing called a DEF 14A. I was a director on a couple of public companies. What the DEF 14A is a thing about the SEC that lays out in detail the short-term and long-term compensation structure for the senior executives, all the named officers, and the board of directors. And if you look at Accenture, one of the reasons they've continued to grow, I believe, is because they have an asset-based measure as part of their long-term comp, not just volume and margin. So they have incentives to build assets, and that's same thing is true of Cognizant. It's not true of Infosys. So I think Accenture's got a really good shot here. It's going to be challenging for the accounting firms and for McKinsey, who generally don't have capital budgets and asset-based incentives for the senior executives, to go as deep as an Accenture or Cognizant can. But it'll be interesting to see.
It's a great point on incentives, John. So it sounds like important.
Yes.
All right, next.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. This concept of the switchboard, and this goes back to the previous article as well, and to what you were saying, Julio. I was thinking about the scenario now where you're using one of these custom GPTs and you're chatting with a GPT-4, but then it's going off and doing this function calling an API assistant, and it's using advanced data analysis, or it's using DALL-E or these other models. And I think that's probably the way that'll work as well. And this concept here really is powerful, and it's important to note because it allows you to have something in the middle that's determining for the specific use case. Should I be using GPT-3.5 and not paying the API costs? Or should I use GPT-4? Or is this something that we can use this other model for because we're trying to do a specific function? And that concept, which they're building here, and it looks like they're leading on, is going to be a massive thing when it comes to cost savings and making the right decisions algorithmically around which models to use for which use cases.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, that's a really good point, and that's an interesting concept here with the way we're using these models. Is do we really want to use one large model, maybe with a really large, complicated prompt to do something, or do we need something else to kind of coordinate or route or kind of break down the problem a little bit so that different smaller models or smaller prompts can do different pieces of the puzzle?
And Julio, as companies design this, the logic of when I call out, can that be deterministic, non-probabilistic, if then call out?
Yeah, that's just. I mean, that's also part of this interesting like argument or area of exploration. Whether let's just call that a router. If the router is very logical and has if-then things, or if the router itself might use an LLM itself to decide what it needs to do, and how it needs to organize what the task at hand. People are still trying to figure all that out.
But I think Paul is asking, can you deterministically drive the LLM itself into which functions it calls?
Right. Then we need to discuss that, but then I would say no. But you could probably deterministically decide which LLM to call.
Yeah.
Yep.
I imagine you have a preprocessor. I know at one firm I worked at, they had the way they did it, they handled queries against, in this case, it was databases before the LLM, very different databases. What they did is there's a preprocessor that used a semantic web from Cambridge Analytics and parsed it, then sent it to different databases, then had a post-processing and then reassembled it. I imagine you could parse queries and say, okay, this needs to go to a deterministic model. This can go to an LLM. But Paul, I would think once you're in the clutches of an LLM, I don't know how you get beyond the probabilistic nature.
Right. So it sounds like important. So,
Yes.
Great. Next, is that the last one, Julio? I mean,
That's the last one, Paul. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that ends the news for today. I'll log off. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Stay on the line, everyone.